I am Penelope, author of epic fantasy and paranormal romance, and welcome to my imaginary friends, a look behind the scenes of an author mapping the worlds in my head and making them a reality. Hello friends, today is Monday, November 11th, 2019, and this is episode 40 of My Imaginary Friends. I'm Leslie. So I am recording a little bit late today. I've never recorded on a Monday before, which is the day the podcast comes out. But there are a number of factors that contribute to that, which I will go over momentarily. First of all, being this week's best thing, which was my anniversary trip. So if you'll recall, actually today is 1 month since my 11-year anniversary, and we had to push our yearly trip back because of all the events I was doing in October. So this past weekend, we went to the greater Atlanta area. We were staying just north of Atlanta to go do our fall leaf watching trip, I guess you could call it, which is our anniversary trip. So we were in Black Rock Mountain State Park, I believe it's called. And we were driving through and hiking, and we also saw Wicked, which was playing in Atlanta, and the musical Wicked. So I think my husband and I have seen Wicked 3 times together. I think I've seen it 5 or 6 times at this point. Wicked is definitely the musical that I've seen the most of anything. Second is Hamilton, which I've seen 4 times. And obviously, I love Wicked. It was a great performance. That touring cast I loved Elphaba. I liked the Glinda. My husband had preferred the Glinda we saw in Chicago. We kind of just go through the various tallies of who we've seen where, and I don't know any of their names, but I'm sure I usually keep the programs, so I'm gonna go and check. But yes, we had a great time. We did the longest 2-mile hike I've ever done, because about 1.5 of those miles must have been uphill. At least it felt like that. So I have a picture, and at some point I'll put it on Instagram. What we did was the Tennessee Rock Trail, and we climbed Black Rock Mountain, apparently, because at a point when I thought I was going to die, we finally reached the top, and I took a picture at the summit. 3,640 feet. Obviously, I'm not a super outdoorsy person, if that's not clear to you by the fact that this 2-mile hike sort of kicked my ass. Because so much of it was just uphill. Like, we would get, I would think, okay, this has got to be the top. And you turn and it's like, no, there's more to go. We still had a lot of fun. It was a great time, and I really enjoyed it. But that, which had been scheduled for a little while, on top of the copy edits for book 3 of Earthsinger Chronicles being due today. So I had to have a working vacation, I guess. Not just the copy edits, but because I was rewriting all of the epigraphs for book 3. So book 3 is Cry of Metal and Bone. It will be out next May. And I just had to review the copy edits. So that was a lot to do. And I got home, we flew home yesterday, and I was just so exhausted. And I thought I was going to record last night, but I don't do well recording at night. And I just was sitting on the couch, and I was like, I can't. I have to do it in the morning. I'm just too tired. Because I actually finished the copy edits and the epigraphs yesterday. So for my copy edit review, since I had been discovering some issues in the finished copies of Song of Blood and Stone, and I actually haven't even read the finished copy of Whispers because I'm too afraid. I usually don't like to. I read pieces of it because I was doing some readings, and so I had to figure out which section to read. But, if I find a mistake or something I don't like in the finished version of the book, it just makes me very upset. So I'm like, if I don't have to read it, once it's on the shelves, I won't. But for this copy edit review, I decided to have the computer read the entire book to me. A lot of writers will say, and it's actually a good practice to read your book out loud. My voice will not allow me to do that. I can't imagine actually reading 130,000 words out loud within a week or 2. I already sound really gravelly, and this is after 4 or 5 weeks of regular events every weekend, so I just don't know how that would happen. But the Macs have, built in, you can have the computer read text to you. And so that's what I did. I picked a voice. I picked Samantha, if you're on a Mac. And I do it fairly fast because I listen to everything fast. I listen to my podcasts at 1.5 or 2 times. Audiobooks, like my husband and my brother were like, why are you listening to that so fast? People talk slow. I talk fast. So I'm always listening to everything really fast. But having the computer read back the manuscript is a good way to catch repeated words and misspellings and also just general weirdness. Now, doing it with a fantasy book and all my fantasy names and spellings, I was a little bit concerned, but the computer did a pretty good job about most of the words. Like some of the words they consistently pronounced wrong, but I was surprised how well Samantha did. And so it helped me find duplicate words. So when I use, especially using the same word in the same sentence or the same paragraph more than twice or more than once. Now this copy editor was actually better about that. So she found a bunch, but I still found more on top of what she had found. And also just little, copy editors are human, so they're going to miss some things. I caught some typos and some other, just errors that I was able to correct. And so I'm really glad that I took the time to have the computer read it to me, even though it took longer than my copy edit reviews have taken in the past. But I think this is definitely the way to go. Another good thing that I found that I wouldn't have if I hadn't been listening to it was there's a character name who appears in this book that is way too close to another character's name. Now they're spelled differently, and this is the first time that this character had appeared. So I have a character named Selene Nidos, who has been in since book 1, the expanded version of book 1. And I had a character named Celine, George Celine, who appears in this book. And they're never together. They're never really even mentioned together. But I'm thinking about the audiobook now. Joanna Penn had a recent episode about writing for audio first and thinking about your audiobooks. And, audiobook listenership is rising exponentially. And so, yeah, I was like, oh, Celine, even though they're spelled differently, they sound too much alike. So I was fortunate in that this was a new character and I could change his last name. So then I had to figure out what to change it to, make sure that that name isn't going to be similar to any of the other names I'm already using, and then do a global search and replace. Fortunately, I found it at the beginning so that I could do the search and replace and then continue to read through the copy edits, listen through the copy edits with that in mind, having changed it up front. Because if I change it after I've already listened to everything, sometimes, especially with apostrophes like possession, a global search and replace can be a little unpredictable. But yeah, another thing that really helped was having the style sheets from my copy editor. And so I maintain a story Bible with all of my characters' names. But I do it as I go. I update the story Bible as I go. So sometimes I will change my mind and then not record that in the story Bible. So I will have on my list of characters in, all the characters in book 3. But then I forgot that at a late stage in revision, I took this character out or swapped them out. So the copy editor style sheet, which, if you don't know, is basically a list of all the proper nouns, the names, the places, the unique words that are used in your story, and they're generated for each book, so each time the copy editor goes through it. A lot of indies don't get style sheets from their copy editor. A lot of freelance copy editors don't provide them, and so one of the things I look for in a freelance copy editor is one who will provide a style sheet. Sometimes they do, and it just costs extra. I think it should just be a mandatory part of a copy edit, but because freelance editors are kind of cropping up to serve the indie market, not necessarily having experience with traditional publishing, some of them probably just don't know, or maybe they just don't think it's necessary. But I find it invaluable to look at the style sheet that I get and then correct my story Bible or update my story Bible based on that. Someone else has already done the work. You can actually also hire people to do story Bibles for you and to probably do a similar thing even outside of a copy edit. But so what happened was I looked at my list, I compared it to the style sheets from the first 2 books and from this book, because when they return the copy edited version, they give you the style sheet. And super helpful. It worked out really well. The only thing is, I've been living with this character's name as George Celine for years, for 3 years, right? And so now I have to get in my head that his name is different. And that's difficult. But I'm really glad that I caught that, and really glad that I finished. Since I was rewriting all of the chapter epigraphs, all 48 plus the epilogue, so 49 total epigraphs, and I had decided to do this because, after I had taken a few months away from the book and read it again for the first time, I realized epigraphs were all wrong. And I feel like I set a bar with Song of Blood and Stone, with the first book in the series, and having these epigraphs that people really responded to. I had a lot of fun with book 2, even though it was super hard, with Whispers of Shadow and Flame. And I had just dropped the ball on book 3. I just wasn't happy with them. So I changed it up, and as I went through the copy edits, I was able to seed in some mentions to connect them better. So the new epigraphs are coming from an in-world book that wasn't actually in the book before. I created this book as I was writing the epigraphs, and so then I went back through, and just like 2 or 3 sentences in the book I found, in the manuscript, I found places where I could talk about this book. And I feel pretty good about that. And so in short, these epigraphs take the form of a sort of epic myth or legend from this country's founding, the country of Yali. So it's a new country that you're going to in book 3 that hasn't, no one's been there in the first 2 books. So there's a journey, so characters are going there. And I want it to be sort of like the Odyssey, in a way. But I wasn't doing a poem again, so, because book 2, I have an epic poem that leads us in, that tells a story of a character that you meet later. So this is sort of the epic myth / legend of, a journey. It's also a journey. And it was really fun to kind of make it relate and to tie it back in. And then, because I'm working on book 4, there's just little Easter eggs, I guess, that will, that have the epigraphs of book 3 relating to book 4. And I'm super proud about that, because I love doing that stuff. I love seeding those things in, and occasionally, people will get it. It's always super satisfying when people get it. They're like, wait, did you do that? And I'm like, yes, you got it. Those are my people. So for this process, over the course of the past 2.5 weeks, I had a religion that was already created, but it wasn't fleshed out. That whole thing about how much world building do you need? Only as much as you need. And so I just had the barest hints of this religion. And so I had to really delve deeper into it and be like, well, how does the religion relate to the creation of this nation, and what kind of stories would they have, and what kind of iconography and symbols and all that stuff. So it was a fast-tracked religion creation, myth creation. Also, I have been listening to Jeffy Kennedy's podcast, First Cup of Coffee. And so for NaNoWriMo, the month of November, and NaNoWriMo is National Novel Writing Month, if anyone doesn't know. But she's doing a daily podcast with tips for pantsing, writing by the seat of your pants, or gardening, right? Your way through your plot. And it's really interesting to, hear how she goes about it. Everyone's process is really fascinating to me, and the fact that her process works for her, it's mind-boggling. But, she's coming at it from a really grounded place, and Taoism, and I think it's super cool. And a lot of her focus is on trusting yourself, trusting the story, sort of trusting in your subconscious, which I absolutely do believe in. I do believe that the story exists in my subconscious and I'm bringing it out. But I bring it out by intense thought and plotting and wrangling my brain, it's not sort of this placid, peaceful, meditative thing where the story is going to come out. I think I'm just a lot more constipated than that. And so it takes far more effort for me to access the subconscious and bring it out. Except when it doesn't. I have talked about, having that flow state, and I do feel that sometimes. But if I had to try and rely on that, that doesn't work for me. I have tried to rely on it before, and it leads to big messes. So but I am still enjoying listening to her process and her tips and getting things out of them. Like, I do think the process of writing the epigraphs, when I have to write something quickly like this, it is all, I call it intuition. It's just all vibes and feeling. I made some notes about the structure of this journey, but I had no idea how it was going to go. This epic journey that I was trying to write, my own version of the Odyssey, in 49 small pieces that fit at the beginning of every chapter. But I just sort of would start writing, and I really did pants my way through it. And as I was going, I would see, oh, wait, this relates to this, and I can do this, and make notes and plan something, write it, pants it, see the connections. And so that's a great example of sort of combining the two. Like, something was coming through, and as I was getting through, 20 and 30 of them, I was like, oh, I see what's happening. I can make this, and I can tweak this here. And, it all existed, and it was all coming forward, and the pieces were there. And once I could see the connections, I could strengthen them, and that was really satisfying. So yeah, that process, I think there's a version of that process that is just creativity, that is just what artists do, whether we're trying to wrangle control of it or we let it just come to us. There's a piece of that I think everyone has. And it is a spectrum of, and it's a spectrum, not just people, but within the process. Like, some days I really need to know everything that's going to happen. And some days I can sit down and just write. And my process seems to be combining them into what works for me and what gets things done in the time they need to be done in. So I do have a wrist update. I have heard from several people who are very concerned about me and my wrists. If you are new, I sprained both of my wrists in June, rock climbing. And I have not been able to really rock climb the way I would like to since then. So my update, I have good news and bad news. Good news is, after another few weeks away from the gym, I went to the rock climbing gym again last week, and I was able to boulder for about 20-25 minutes wearing my braces, and had no ill effects. I didn't have any additional pain. I actually took off my left brace at a certain point and did a few routes without the brace, and then put it back on when it started twinging. So my wrists are getting better. They're getting stronger, and I'm going to try to go once a week and not overdo it. Really going to try not to overdo it, and just practice and strengthen my wrists. I don't know if I'm ready to belay yet, and I'm not going to get too in the weeds, but belaying is when you climb with a partner and you're the one responsible for their safety, for making sure they don't plummet while they're on the ropes to their death. And I'm not confident in my ability to grab the rope and hold the weight and all the stuff you have to do to belay. So as much as I would like to do the rope climbing, and I think it would be a little easier because with a rope I'm not gripping as hard, I'm not holding the hold so much because I have the rope to catch me, I would have to also catch my partner, and I don't feel like I'm there yet, but hopefully I will be there soon. Bad news. About 3 or so weeks ago, my right thumb really started hurting, and my wrist started hurting again, even though it had gotten a lot better. My right wrist was always better. Long story short, went to the doctor and found out that I have arthritis in my thumb. I don't know how that happened. I'm not a huge phone person. I was like, could it be phone usage? But I don't know. So arthritis in my thumb at age 41, super fun, right? But it is affecting my right wrist, which sucks for climbing. I have a new brace. It's a thumb splint, which I'm not wearing at the moment, but I wear a lot. And I'm going to start going to occupational therapy to try to fix this and strengthen my thumb and my hand so that I can get back to doing what I love. I said the doctor, and I was like, so, okay, arthritis, well, there's no cure for that, but it's not really going to damage my thumb anymore if I climb. Like, I don't care about the pain. If I can climb and just be in pain, as long as it's not, like, causing further damage, that's okay, right? And she was like, Leslie, the pain is telling you to stop. And I'm like, I have stopped for 5 months. I haven't been climbing. She looked at me like I was a crazy person because I was just like, pain is not the issue. I stopped because I didn't want to damage my wrist so that I couldn't climb like forever. Like if it's a matter of stopping for a few months so I can heal. Anyway, so there's some progress. There's a light in the darkness, and I will keep you updated. I appreciate those people who've reached out with concern, and yeah, one of these days. Fun fact I learned during my research for writing this week: St. Lucia is the only country in the world named after a woman. I was researching, I needed to name a country. I don't know, it didn't actually end up anywhere. I was thinking of adding a country in the world for some reason. And so I was just looking up country names and how are countries named. And I found out a lot of interesting things. I didn't know a lot of countries were named after people. Like Russia and Belarus are both named after Rus, some kind of folk hero of Russian folklore or something like that. And yeah, just all of the countries that are named after people that I had no clue. So St. Lucia was named after, I think, St. Lucy. I didn't write that down, but the only country in the world named after a woman. It's not fair. Other research things. I was researching silkworms, and I had no idea that silkworms required the larva to be boiled, and like were so non-animal friendly. I had no idea. I'd never thought about silk. I don't really wear silk. It just seems like very inconvenient to wear. So I never really considered it, but it seems kind of awful. And I'm a meat eater. I don't have a problem wearing leather shoes, and animals that die but aren't like boiled alive. That seems to be another level of cruelty. So another not so fun fact that I learned. And I'm sure most people probably know, but it never came up in my life. A really interesting quote I saw from Victoria Schwab, who is a purveyor of fine quotes about writing and authorship. This is from her NaNoWriMo pep talk. And she says, "You're not making a whole body. You're making its bones. You don't need the muscle, the sinew, the skin. You certainly don't need the makeup or the clothes. You just need bones, something to work with, something to build on, something to make better, make whole." And that is first drafting. I think NaNoWriMo is great for first drafting, and I just loved the way she put that. I do think about it as I'm creating a skeleton in the first draft, and that's why I believe in fast drafting. And all the other drafts are just applying the rest of that stuff: the sinew, the muscle, the bone, the skin, and yeah. So it was a really cool way to think about it. And I've also been listening to a lot more podcasts. I've been trying to, catch at least a little bit of the podcasts in the Frolic Podcast Network that I've joined, and some of them have been great. My TBR list is already crazy, but every time I listen to another book podcast, you get more books to read. And I snuck in a book or two that was recommended from one of the podcasts, which was nice. One good thing is kind of even remembering books that you have read and loved. Like there was one podcast that was talking about The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie, which is a book I read a couple of years ago, and I loved. That was one of those books where I read it and immediately read it again, like twice in a row, because I just thought it was fabulous. And so I don't know that I have room in my schedule to read it again right now, but maybe it's nice to have those books that you can pull out of your pocket that are known quantity, that are going to give you that emotional hit that you want and that that you love, and you've forgotten enough that you can have a fresh new reading experience with it. I am still like feeling the effects of that hard push to get these copy edits and epigraphs done. And I responded to it yesterday by watching 2 Hallmark movies in a row, which is kind of a good way to deaden your brain in just a nice, pleasant way. But it might be nice to pick up one of these books that, I guess you can call them glass box books. Like you can break a glass box and pull it out and know what you're going to get. The Madness of Lord Ian Mackenzie is one of those. Another book that everybody else seems to feel is like super influential to them that I didn't was Dreaming of You by Lisa Kleypas. And it's another historical. I liked it. I read it. I like Lisa Kleypas. But there's a whole thing about Derek Craven that I didn't realize was a thing. But I've heard no less than 3 podcasts in the past few weeks talking about Derek Craven and how wonderful Dreaming of You was, and how, like, you know, it's a seminal work, I guess, in people's romance reading lives. And maybe just because I didn't read it until probably the past 2 or 3 years, I didn't feel that way. Like, it was cool. I don't remember Derek Craven leaving an impression on me, but yeah, I just felt a little out of the loop on that, which is fine. I'm often out of the loop. I don't often have the reactions that other people have to things, but I just thought that was interesting. But I'm a Lisa Kleypas fan, like Wallflowers, Ravenels. Once I finally read them, and my friend Nikisha had been telling me to read them for years. And I was like, oh, I don't know, I don't really feel like it. I'm not in a historical mood, like historicals. I need to be in a certain mental, place and certain mindset to be ready for a historical. But when I am, I binge them. I just I read all of the Wallflowers in a week or less. And anyway. One other thing I saw that I thought was really cool in this climate of criticism and, negativity that we're all in. So there's a new movie coming out, Last Christmas, which I'm actually looking forward to. It's with the Mother of Dragons, what is her name? Emilia Clarke and Henry Golding. And, Christmas rom-com, it looks really silly and sweet, but it's been getting bad reviews. And so the director, Paul Feig, there was an article talking about his response to his 1-star reviews, which was just like the best response ever. And I think he tweeted or something. He was like, can our 1-star at least be a really, really big star? And, the article's kind of, and I'll link to it, but about, anytime you're going to put yourself out there creatively and you're going to, not everybody's going to like it. And we all know this. We're all going to get 1-star reviews. What we do is not for everyone. But the kind of grace and humor with which he responded to that was really inspiring to me. And I think that if I can take a little bit of that and, a little humor and lightness, it's not a personal attack, even though people can frame 1-stars as personal attacks. You don't have to choose to take it that way. Ryan Holiday was on a podcast that I was listening to also, and he's an author of books. I can't remember the name of any of it, like Stoicism, The Obstacle is the Way is one of his books. And on that podcast, he said, they were talking about being offended and cancel culture and things like that. And he said that you are complicit in being offended. You have to decide to be offended. Like, a person can say something and it's up to you how to respond to that. And I also think that makes a lot of sense. If you respond like Paul Feig with humor and grace, then you're maintaining your equilibrium. You're maintaining your inner peace. You don't have to respond to people, even if they're coming at you negatively, with negativity. Like, you make the choice. So you can either choose to be offended or choose not to be. And it's just another way to just kind of maintain that, to look at the world in a different way and to respond. The only thing we're in control of is ourselves, ultimately. And that was something my dad really tried to, hammer home to us growing up. One of his favorite sayings was, don't worry about what you can't control. And, you can control yourself. And so those are just things that, I don't know, they kind of struck me. And I think that they're good to remember. So hopefully they'll help you too. That is it for me for this week. Sorry about the late episode. I will try to be more on time next week. For episode show notes and to sign up for the Footnotes newsletter, go to myimaginaryfriendsshow.com. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and check out the video episodes on YouTube. I would really, really appreciate a rating or review to help support the show. And My Imaginary Friends is part of the Frolic Podcast Network. For more podcasts you'll love, check out frolic.media/podcasts. Have a great week and happy reading.